400 soldiers have been killed or incapacitated in a matter of a single day. So think about that for a moment, a fully manned brigade wiped out in the blink of an eye. This is not just a setback for Ukraine, it is a catastrophe that their military leadership cannot afford. Each fallen soldier represents months, if not years, of training, preparation, and experience. With each life lost, Ukraine is losing a piece of its military infrastructure, its core fighting capability. But the losses don't stop there. Alongside the loss of personnel, Ukraine's equipment losses are piling up at an alarming rate. In just a few days, 49 vehicles have been destroyed, including 26 artillery units and 12 heavy armored vehicles. These losses are significant and they are not easily replaced. Ukraine's ability to mount an effective defense depends heavily on these assets. The 26 artillery units alone represent a critical blow to their ability to strike at Russian forces from a distance. Without sufficient artillery, Ukraine's forces are left vulnerable to long-range Russian strikes, and without 12 heavy armored vehicles, Ukrainian soldiers find themselves exposed to advancing Russian tanks and mechanized infantry. The situation is becoming untenable for Ukraine, and their forces are buckling under the pressure. Let's zoom in on Zaporizhzhia, where the situation is rapidly deteriorating for Ukraine. In just the last 24 hours, 80 personnel have been lost in this region alone. Now, some might argue that 80 soldiers is a smaller figure compared to the 430 lost in Kursk, but make no mistake, this is not a good sign. The increase in losses here indicates that Russia's pressure is spreading, hitting multiple fronts simultaneously. Zaporizhzhia was once considered relatively stable for Ukraine, but now we see how quickly that has changed. 80 soldiers gone in a single day means more gaps in Ukraine's already weakened defenses, and those gaps will only grow wider as Russian forces continue their advances. In total, across all fronts, Ukraine has lost 49 vehicles, including crucial artillery units and heavy armored vehicles. Losing 26 artillery pieces is a major blow. Artillery is often referred to as the king of battle for a reason. It allows forces to maintain a defensive perimeter and engage the enemy before they come in. Without this firepower, Ukrainian infantry is left defenseless, especially against the mechanized might of the Russian army. And the loss of 12 heavy armored vehicles. This further hampers Ukraine's ability to protect its soldiers on the battlefield. Armor is critical in both offensive and defensive operations. With these vehicles destroyed, Ukrainian forces will find it much harder to defend their positions, let alone mount any effective counterattacks. And let's not forget the human cost. With 2,395 soldiers either dead or incapacitated, Ukraine is losing more than just men. They are losing the core of their fighting force. This is not just a one-off, this is a pattern. Day after day, we see Ukrainian losses climbing, with no end in sight. The loss of manpower at this scale is unsustainable. These soldiers are not just statistics, they are the backbone of Ukraine's defense. Every loss weakens their ability to hold key positions. Every loss brings Russia closer to victory. In Kursk, as mentioned earlier, 430 soldiers have been lost in just a single day, alongside crucial equipment. This is the kind of attrition that no army can withstand for long. It's a slow, grinding war of exhaustion, and Ukraine is clearly on the losing end. The same is true in other regions as well. The cumulative effect of these losses is beginning to show. Ukrainian forces are being forced to retreat from key positions, leaving more ground for Russian forces to advance. But the situation only gets worse when we turn our attention to Bakhmut, where Ukrainian troops are in full retreat. As Inspector Scott Ritter has pointed out repeatedly, Ukraine's military structure is being steadily eroded by Russia's superior strategy. The battlefield reality in Bakhmut and elsewhere underscores this inevitable collapse, just as Ritter has predicted. Bakhmut, once a key symbol of Ukrainian resistance, is now a battlefield that tells a different story. Ukrainian forces in this area are retreating in the face of mounting Russian pressure. The casualty figures are devastating. Ukrainian personnel losses in Bakhmut have reached 600 soldiers per day. That's right, minus 600 soldiers falling every day. Previously, this number ranged between 700 and 800, but now it's clear that Ukraine simply doesn't have enough men left to sustain those higher casualty figures. The reduction is not a sign of success, but a reflection of just how badly their manpower has been depleted. Let's be clear, losing 600 soldiers in a single day is still an unspeakable loss. Each one of those men represents a piece of Ukraine's dwindling defensive line. And as these losses mount, Ukraine's ability to hold Bakhmut grows weaker by the hour. It's not just about the number of troops lost, it's about the psychological and strategic blow this represents. With fewer men on the front lines, morale crumbles and so do defensive capabilities. And with every retreat, Russia's hold on this key region tightens. Meanwhile, in Avdiivka, another vital battleground, Ukrainian forces have lost 620 soldiers in just the last 24 hours. This number, while horrific, is now becoming a daily reality for Ukraine's military leadership. Avdiivka has been under constant siege from Russian forces, and every day Ukraine's losses increase. These 620 soldiers didn't just die, they were killed defending a position that is now more vulnerable than ever. Avdiivka's strategic importance cannot be overstated. It has been one of the few areas where Ukraine managed to hold back Russian advances. But now, with losses this high, even this region is on the verge of collapse. And it's not just Bakhmut and Avdiivka. Across the entire front line, Ukraine's losses are piling up. Pokrovsk, a once formidable stronghold, is now under threat from Russian forces as well. Yesterday, Russia launched intense attacks in recent weeks, breaking through Ukrainian defenses and leaving their troops scrambling to recover. The collapse of Pokrovsk would be a major blow to Ukraine's southern defensive strategy. If Pokrovsk falls, it will open a wide corridor for Russian forces to advance even deeper into Ukrainian territory, bringing the freighters line ever closer to Ukraine's core regions. In Kharkiv, the numbers might seem smaller, but the pattern is the same. 70 soldiers lost in the past few days, yet another sign that Ukraine's ability to maintain its defensive perimeter is faltering. While 70 soldiers might seem like a relatively low figure compared to the catastrophic losses in Bakhmut and Avdiivka, it still represents a significant toll in Ukraine's stretched-thin forces. Each one of these losses further weakens Ukraine's already overexerted lines, and while Ukraine wasn't tipped on their attempts at resummon suffer on the ground, their attempts at retaliation from the air are proving equally ineffective. In Uglidar, the situation is no different. Ukrainian forces are facing one of the most catastrophic defeats yet. Russian forces, numbering over 5,000 soldiers, have surrounded Uglidar on three sides, leaving a narrow corridor for retreat. But let's not be fooled, this so-called retreat route is nothing but a death trap. Russian artillery is positioned all along this narrow path, and any Ukrainian forces attempting to escape will be decimated. The fate of Uglidar is sealed. It is no longer a question of if the city will fall, but when. The 72nd Brigade of the Ukrainian Army, once an elite fighting force, is now